Welcome to Higher Exchanges. I'm your host, Jesse Redbend, Head of Investor Relations and Business Development at Leaf Brand. I'm here this week and every week with Morgan Paxia. Morgan is the co-founder of Poseidon. Morgan, what's going on, my friend?
Doing well. Just healing up after Emily and I were racing sailboats this weekend in Long Beach, and I tore up my hands, but getting better now. It was a fun weekend.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of having lunch with Emily and her husband. Stopped by Santa Barbara on the way down. It was always good to catch up with people not in a business context sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
How'd you guys do in the race?
Good. We had about 21 teams, mostly West Coast. A few Mexican teams came up and had a little bit of a slow start on Friday, but then won Saturday, Sunday, and finished second overall.
Oh, wow, cool. Well, nice work. Everyone out there will see we have a third man on our screen, and we are honored to have Ted Lidie, founder of Alien Labs, on the show. Ted, what's going on, man?
Man, not much, Jesse. Thanks for having me. Morgan, great to meet you. Excited to talk about all things. There's a lot going on right now, and probably hasn't been a better time for cannabis in general for a while. I mean, ever, probably. The world's opening up, so.
Well, that's kind of a hot take in my world. Most of the people I talk to are miserable, so I'm excited to get into that a little bit more.
Yeah, we have our ups and downs, but
Yeah.
the brand is powerful, so we're in a little bit of a different position than a lot of cannabis companies.
Yeah, I'm thinking about you this week, not in a creepy manner, but I've got a jar of your
That's fine.
You are a handsome guy. But I wasn't thinking about you in that way. I was thinking about you because I got a jar of Brainwash and a jar of lemon fuel that I've been smoking on for the past 10 days or so.
Nice. Yeah, I love OGs. Lemon Fuel is always a classic, and the Brainwash is a new classic for us. It was our biggest launch month of an eighth so far in our history. So
really?
Great. Yeah, it went really well. That was a collab with Talking Terps, who are a couple of my friends longtime friends, from the legacy market, and crazy enough, so that's a cross of Skittles and OZ Kush, and my friend Lior, he's one half of Talking Terps. He bought the Skittles cut for us from Third Gen. We drove there one night at like 11 o'clock, and we paid him 20 grand.
No way.
And at the time you could get it, but we just wanted to show respect, and we've always been about that, to the creators. So we went and got it straight from them. And then also the first big seed hunt we ever did, Lior purchased the seeds. He dropped about $5,000 at Third Gen and Terphog's seed booth at Emerald Cup one year. And that OZ Kush was the only thing we found, and we kept it. And then, we crossed them and we found Brainwash. And I was like, you contributed this to us, and it's part of our lore and our history. So we should definitely, oops, sorry about the color change there. We should definitely collab on this one. And we did. And it's been very successful for us.
More kind of jumping through the agenda now, but I'm curious, have you been finding more of an appetite for those for those OGs? Because that's usually what I lean into, but I found it's harder to find good OGs in the rec market.
Yeah, it's just tough. It's a strain that's volatile. It smells so good, and it burns, it tastes so good that those terps just don't age well. So, I think I haven't looked in a few months, but the last time I checked, Blem Unruly OG was like the number 2 flower SKU in the state. So, people are finding it there. They're finding it with CBX, and we're dropping our versions too. OG is what Alien Labs, got hot off of. I've always loved OG. It's my favorite thing to smoke, and that was the first, big strain that we really put out, and people, we became sought after for. So I think the tide's turning a little bit towards OG, and I've been saying this for a long time, a few years now. So I'm glad to see it finally starting to come true. We never really, took place in like the candies, as they call them, the, lemon cherry gelato runs, etc. We don't really grow anything like that. So it's cool to see the stuff that we do like and we do grow, coming back into, popular culture.
Yeah. You guys are real smoke too, and so you appreciate what's actually looks good and is stony, where I feel like sometimes these days the world just, gravitates towards what has the biggest bag appeal and some sort of a, fruity candy nose. But the fact, is it actually good stony flower, I think sometimes gets lost.
Yeah, the tide's changing on that too, man. I think, people are starting to understand what quality is more than ever. And I think, we check all the boxes. It's not just effective, which, you know, I need something to be effective. That's something I've always looked for. It's not just the bag appeal. It's not just the nose. It's the smokability and the combustibility and how it translates from, you know, the nose to your palate. And, you know, when you smoke flower, it's not supposed to taste like smoke. It's not supposed to taste like shit, for lack of a better term. You know, it's supposed to taste good. It's supposed to be a pleasant experience that you walk away from. It's medical, right? I mean, your throat shouldn't burn after you doing something medical. So, you know, we're leading the charge alongside a few other groups, and we're trying to show the world what real quality is. And for us at scale, you know, a lot of my friends that have brands that are, you know, putting out super high quality or smaller, because it is tough to scale quality. So that's kind of become our goal and our guiding light, so to speak.
Anything else you're putting out right? Go ahead, Morgan. Sorry.
Yeah, so I was just going to ask I know we're not even into the agenda yet, but what do you think is the best way of consuming your flower? Do you roll your own? Do you use a bong or something, or how do you go about it?
You know, everyone's different. Everyone prefers something different. For me, I think joints and specifically 2 gram and up are the best way to experience cannabis flower. I know that's a lot. It's a big ask for a lot of people. It's, you know, 2 joints and an eighth. That's a ton. So, but I think it's the best way to experience it. And I don't smoke bongs personally, but I know plenty of people that do. They like the bongs. I think it really comes down to like what you're after, you know, as far as an experience is concerned. If I'm a hash smoker, a big hash smoker, so I understand wanting to take one hit and getting the effect out of it and going about your day. So I see bongs and pipes more like that. But if you're looking for an experience, a social experience, it's all joints for me.
Yeah, 2 G's that's a big dog.
Yeah, it's just, you know,
serving.
It's scientific, man. It creates a larger surface area to burn more thoroughly. So you burn it down to the carbon, you know, which is white ash. They call it white ash nowadays, but what it's really is it's fully combusting. And you know, the more surface area you have, the better you can get your flower to combust.
Remember these things?
Oh yeah, volcanoes, man. I love them. You know, it's funny. You know, that is Stores and Bickle, man. What a gem. You know, shout out to, I think Canopy Growth picked them up, and that's probably the only thing making money in their portfolio.
Yeah, they make great stuff. My dad's a medical consumer, and I got him I think it's the Mighty, which is the handheld, and that works great too.
Yeah, you know, I remember growing up breeding in high time, seeing those big volcano bags, and I like it. It gets you, it's effective differently. You know, you could take a strain and smoke it in a joint and a strain out of the volcano, and it's different. It affects you differently, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I take the volcano, I blow up bags, then I pull those through a bong to get the water filtration. I also like the feeling of pulling a tube; like it's kind of a good feeling.
Yeah,
so I try to merge those two things together. Well, let's roll back. We kind of jumped ahead in our agenda, which is cool. Back a little bit, Ted. And can you talk a little bit? You know, we're saying off camera how you grew up in Reading. Can you talk how you got started and how you came up with the idea with Alien?
You know, in Reading, that's just kind of a way of life. Cannabis is. My aunts and uncles grew in the house that I was conceived in. You know, when I got a little bit older, I started, you know, and people started asking about weed to me. You know, I went to them and they would give me whatever I needed, and then I started selling packs, and then I moved to San Francisco, I think in 2006, and I just saw this big medical thing happening. You know, there was already dispensaries that looked like Apple stores there. I see that's like a headline, not so much anymore, but, you know, 5 years ago, oh, this, you know, cannabis dispensary in LA looks like an Apple store. And that was already happening in San Francisco. So I was able to see all that, and then also see the creation of the cookie strain and the cookies brand, because that was happening in San Francisco at the time. And I took those, you know, learnings and thoughts back, you know, meanwhile, searching the forums, learning how to grow IC Mag. I flowered out my first plants and finished them. I had tried before, but I never got to the finish line to produce smokable flower, you know, so I did that for the first time in San Francisco. Just learned a bunch, moved to Sacramento, set my grow up in the back, and got a job at a dispensary as a door guy. I went there every day to buy stuff, and I would ask every day, can I have a job? He said, I want one. Didn't need one. I just wanted one. And I finally got one, and I moved up very quickly. I had a lot of knowledge. It's just something that you have coming from Reading, where it's just a weed place, and everyone shared knowledge at that time. It's not so common anymore for companies and people to share knowledge, which sucks. But um, I worked my way up to manager, and then I went back to Reading. Um, started managing a new collective, and met my person who would be my partner in the future, but no longer. Um, that the Feds, Long Beach versus the Pack case, got that store shut down. And then I went and started trimming until I saved up enough money to build out my grow. And then the rest is, sort of history, as they say.
When did the name Alien Labs and the brand start?
It started in 2013. So this is year 12. And, I don't talk about this part of Alien Labs enough. I think it's something that we will in the future, but it was really, alien is obviously a term that means extraterrestrial and all the things associated with that. But it was an outsider. I was an outsider to the culture it was, really rooted around hip hop and cookies at the time, so all I knew was I was the opposite of that, essentially. I was a nerd from Reading that smoked weed and loved super high quality, and our quality was literally out of this world. It was so much better than what was at the time. um that term alien really meant outsider, and it's kind of become this brand now that the things that it was started upon are now cool: anime and horror movies, and being a nerd is cool in 2025, and it has been,
Yeah.
for the last few years. So it was kind of serendipitously, it came to be, and it just worked out perfectly. But yeah, alien means outsider, and we use the term labs because our grows were always super clean. Medical grade at the time was something that also was like bubbling up. So we ran with it, and it paid off.
Yeah, I got into the industry in 2016 and ran a collective for a few years, and it seems like that was really kind of the sweet spot for great flower. There's always great flower on the market, but it feels like during that 2P era, when a lot of smaller grows and different regulations, you had a lot of great flower coming out. But sometimes, Ted, I saw a guy who had a bunch of lights and he's growing great flower, but he sucked at the marketing part, or he didn't care about business and he just wanted to grow the weed. And I think you're an interesting guy, and Alien is an interesting story because you guys were growing fire, but then you made a real unique effort, especially through Instagram, to go out there and tell that story. Can you talk a little bit about what Instagram did for the brand and kind of how that led to the perception around maybe how big you really
Yeah,
were?
yeah. I've been on the internet since a young kid. I was the first kid in my neighborhood to get high speed internet. At the time it was like ISDN, which is like a satellite uplink, but it was so much faster than 56K and dialing into AOL. So I kind of knew really well about how the internet worked. And when Instagram, not when it first came out, but pretty around the time it first came out, they didn't censor at all. Like, they did not care what we were posting. So we were able to cultivate a huge following off of, basically nothing. We had 40 lights, 60 lights at the top of the game back then, which is nothing. But, most people worldwide knew about our flower because we strategically placed it in the markets, and we strategically used the internet, to our advantage to make it seem like we were bigger than we were. A little fake it till you make it concept. And it really worked for us, man. We got it to the right stores: Green Wolf, Jungle Boys, all the places that had the eyes on them for cannabis at the time. And we were able to kind of lift ourselves out of, I joke about it, but it is true. The only two things that have ever come out of Reading are Megan Rapinoe, who is the soccer player, in Alien Labs, and that's it. And creating a worldwide recognized brand with however much we do in revenue from a town of 80,000 is unheard of, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, I was listening to Caleb from Connected on First Smoke of the Day, doing some homework for today's show, and he said when he reached out to you, he thought you were really giving him a few packs, and he's like, "How come you guys won't give me more? How come you guys won't give me more?" And he thought you guys for sure had this big blown out warehouse, and then he
Yeah,
figured out you had like 4 garages going or something, right?
that's right. Yeah, exactly. And at the time he wanted more, but we were still being strategic with it. So it's like, yeah, we know you want more, but also, like, we want to be in LA, we want to be at the hot spots in San Francisco and all these other places. So we couldn't give him everything that he wanted, but on top of that, we didn't even have that much. So it was perfect, really.
And what year did you do the deal with them? And can you talk a little bit
Yeah,
about
yeah,
what
we
that
did
is?
our deal in shoot, I think 2017, and it was finalized in 2018. I started working for Connected on some other stuff. You know, they didn't really have a big brand presence, and they wanted some help marketing. So I was like, I'll be happy to. While we were doing a licensing deal with them, where they kind of gave us, in Reading, it was a traditionally banned city and county. So when they asked, so when legalization started coming about, we were like, well, we're going to kind of be screwed. Like, not to say that we wouldn't keep growing, but we wanted to get it into the stores, and they were making that a little more difficult, make it sound a little more difficult. At least I think now we've kind of found out that this metric system, for whatever reason, just isn't that great. So I moved to Sacramento. Sacramento was the first city to say, hey, we're going to offer these grow permits, and I moved there to try and get one. And Caleb, they were leaving a spot, and they wanted to keep us on the shelf, so they're like, let's do this licensing deal. You guys can have the grow and run it your way, and we did. And then we decided to merge. It was just easier for us to focus on what we did best, and for them to focus on what they did best, which was the business side. And now, I help with a little bit of a lot of stuff for both brands, product, marketing, brand, R&D, quality. I'm in all those, all those different parts of the organization. And it's been great, man. It's been an awesome thing. I think it's the most successful partnership in cannabis ever. I don't think there's anything that really even comes close. And I credit all of that to Caleb for just allowing me to just do my thing and having the trust in me to run it up, as they say. And that's what I do. So that's what we've done.
And was that intentionally a move right around when we were going to Prop 64? For people that don't know, sometimes we throw around 215 and 64 between the three of us because we're all in California and assume everybody talking about, but the medical regime in California was Prop 215. Very different rules, nonprofit, collective type structures, a lot less taxes, a lot more flexibility in terms of who you could buy from, what you could buy, et cetera. Then we went to adult use in Prop 64, which completely changed the regulations on a probation level, retail level. Most things about the business changed. The taxes went way up, and so it was a huge shift for consumers and a huge shift for operators. So was this move with Connected intentionally timed around 64?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we did. We wouldn't have had a licensed facility to operate in, so we had to do what we had to do. But also, it just wasn't our strength. We weren't strong. We didn't even have trademarks. We just weren't. We were just existing as it's funny, I said it back then, but it's just like Alien Labs was just a piece of paper, and it wasn't even. It was like an Instagram account,
Yeah.
because there was no corporate structure there. So we had things that they lacked, which is R&D and breedability, and obviously the influence, but also just the ability to select phenos and put it out there and put our stamp on it and have people really like it. And they had the business acumen to get to the next few levels, and the partnership has gone as well as it could have.
That's awesome to hear success stories, especially when you hear about high profile breakups seem to be more the rule than the exception.
Definitely.
So when you went to 64, Ted, like I said, my observation, I guess I'm a consumer and an operator, but just looking at more through the consumer lens, during Prop 215, the medical days, that was the peak in California for me. It seemed like smaller craft type grows, not as handled by as many people. Everything was fresher. A lot of times you could actually smell something, before you bought it, which is, huge for me. So can you talk a little bit about what changed from a production perspective and how what you've had to do to try to keep quality up in this new adult use regime?
Yeah, I actually think differently. I think there's never been more available high quality cannabis. I think that's just like flat across the board. It's not as simple as going into a store, but there's far more growers that have come out in contrast to what is now than there ever has been. I mean, people are getting $600 to $1,000 an ounce for really high quality stuff that the market has been like, this is it. This is really what you want to be smoking. So, but there's been so many changes, right? And I think the main one that's hurt quality is taxation, over taxation at that. When you're being taxed effectively 50 to 60%, I mean, you have to do everything you can to cut corners and to cut costs, or to cut costs, I should say. And that means cutting corners in a lot of cases. we never did that. We didn't cut corners. We just tried to learn how to scale up, and that wasn't without its pain points, of course. You know, it was tough to do that, and I still look back on some eras of our quality that I'm like, fuck, you know, we blew it with that. But it was all an effort to get where we are now, which I think, you know, most people can comfortably say we're the biggest producer of quality at scale. And I don't think that is, I don't intend on losing that. I don't think we will lose it. You know, Caleb and I both have the passion to produce quality, and that's really what it takes. You know, I'm not always the most loved person in the organization because I have to have, you know, the hard conversations with people where I say, hey, I know we want to think this is quality, but this just really isn't, you know, what we're talking about. This isn't what our brand is known for. And, you know, a lot of times that can be at odds with the business decisions that need to be made. But that is why I think our partnership has gone so well, is because they've allowed me to kind of be the voice that's, you know, not always the business voice, but the voice of the culture and within our business, I should say, and not only the culture of cannabis, but the culture of our business. And for us to say, hey, this isn't the quality that we need, and you guys need to, you know, make the steps towards what we need and what we have to be who we are. Because, you know, it's I laugh a lot and joke about this, but it's true. It's like, if you were starting out now and, you know, you had the funds and the you know, the knowledge to create a brand, there's no context of quality. So you can put out something that isn't, you know, great, and people can like it, people can eat it up because they don't know any better. Most of the consumer base is not educated, and more are becoming educated every day. But you know, we're, as a brand, known for quality. So if people go buy a jar and that's not what's in there, like, they're gonna, you know, what they're gonna do is they're gonna DM me about it, and they're gonna say, hey, what the hell, I bought this and you said it was gonna be good and it sucked. You know,
Yeah.
so that was something that was we had to learn to grapple with, you know, because there is a baseline of quality that we have to stay at and exceed for us to be successful. It's not just numbers on the board, you know, like some companies can go about, which you know, I think about it all the time. And I was telling Caleb the other day, I'm like, you know, we should have done distillate pins, dude. We were trying to be cool, but we should have been making money. And, you know, it's a joke, but you know, looking forward and having customers, you know, say, oh, if you're going to buy Alien Labs, it's going to be good. That's the goal, and that's what we've done so far. So,
And what does great flower mean to you? Like, what are the traits of great flower?
man, it doesn't look good. You know, I'll tell you that much. It doesn't have anything to do with looks. It has to do with how it smokes. I mean, so many cannabis companies are focused on how things look and how they smell. But customers don't look at and smell the flower, they smoke it. You know, so a great flower should have great effects, and your menu should have a wide variety of effects. It should taste like it smells, or at least have flavor translation. There's some great strains out there that don't taste how they smell, but they taste great. And I mean, like candy, like whatever it is, you know, that the smell that you're smelling, is it savory? Is it sweet? Is it sour? Those should translate to your palate. And you know, it should be smooth. It shouldn't bite at your throat. It's a medical experience. You know, you shouldn't walk away with a sore throat from it. And you know, the final thing is, it should be like it should be a pleasant experience. You know, it's good to smoke, you know, roll up a big joint and smoke it, and it should be, every hit should be smooth and flavorful and medicating, you know, effective. That's another thing I think a lot of brands miss nowadays, is the effects part. They're also focused on how something should smoke. And a lot of the times you get those better kind of smoking strains from strains that are less resinous, and less resinous strains are less effective. So um, that's really how I think of quality. You know, you should be able to roll it up and taste it and have a nice experience, and not there shouldn't be a smoky taste. There shouldn't be an acidic taste. It should be positive. It should be a good experience. So that's what we're aiming for.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a popular strain right now that doesn't turn colors. Maybe
Skittles.
Ted?
Skittles is
Yeah.
probably the number one strain that, you know, in the connoisseur space, it's the number one strain right now, and it's green as it gets, and it's ugly, and
Yeah.
people love it. You know, in the rec market, it's different. You have to kind of walk the line of something that looks good and smells good, and tastes good, and checks all the boxes, because, you know, it is tough to get the recreational market consumers to buy a strain that is ugly if you don't have brand recognition. You know, what we put in our jars, people are like, okay, this is good. no matter what, even if it's ugly, we're still going to try it because they usually don't steer us wrong. And but that's rare, not a lot of brands have that. I think there's probably just like a handful of us left, really.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much how I view quality. And then I think it's all the things, it's all those things. But most people in my position, especially, don't talk about the actual smoking experience, and that's the main thing that we focus on.
We have a ton of CEOs on, and it's always good to talk to somebody that actually smokes weed. Like, for
Yeah,
example, Jason Wild from TerraSend is, a visionary leader, but the guy actually has grown some plants and will post a picture of himself taking a bong rip. And you have other people that come on the show that are obviously attorneys and never grown a plant and don't even smoke weed. And I feel like they sometimes maybe can't really understand the quality issue. Like they can, but I feel like hearing it is different than experiencing it.
yeah, I completely agree, man. It's seeing it and doing it is two things. I mean, we had our, head cultivator. We had to, not that we had to, but he was a new smoker, didn't fully understand like the things that we were talking about. And another thing that he introduced to us was blind testing. So we put the blind to him. I went out and got some of my favorite, I think it was probably Blue Zushi, and we did a blind test with in a period 5-6 years ago when our quality wasn't the best. And we said, hey, which one of these things do you like more? And oh, I like this one more. And I said, yeah, well, that's not ours. Like that's what quality is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And from there we've come so far. And it, at the end of the day, what it's about for us is just mixing the science with the art, because the science is going to get you, the margins, the yield, the everything, but the art is what you have to understand to be able to get to the scientific place in the real way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does. I just grow in my backyard. I do a few plants every year. This year I've just got one. But yeah, you can follow the instructions on the nutrients that you're using, but that's a different thing than actually reading what the
That's
plant
right.
needs. And I don't claim to growing, I don't claim to be good at it, but I definitely have learned so much from that process. I think I'm not growing this year, but I'm like, man, every season, even if I just do one plant, I find that I learn a lot from it.
I think it's your, constitutional, state constitution, whatever it is. It's your the state, put us in a position to be able to grow at home. You should do it. That's just
Yeah.
really learn about it, learn how tough it is, so you can really appreciate growing quality cannabis at scale that's available for the world essentially.
Yeah, once in a while you'll see the comment that everyone's going to grow their own weed and that people like you are going to be out of business. And I always know that comment usually comes from somebody that's never grown weed before.
That's right, because they don't understand how hard it is, and the other thing is like people want variety. Like even if you grow six
For
plants,
sure, for sure.
for 6 plants, 6 months later, you're going to be sick of those strains. So um, I love growing at home. I think every state should allow it. It should be, like I said, it should be a federal right for people in all across the world, not even just the United States. But at the end of the day, people aren't going to do that. So
Yeah. Well, we talked about some of the challenges just in scaling in California, Morgan, and why don't I pass the mic over to you? Let's
Mhm.
dig to what it takes to expand outside of California, which I'm guessing quite a bit more challenging.
Yeah. So, it seems like you guys have learned quite a bit over the years, which is great. Always love people learning and growing because it's just, I think it's just good health to do that. But I guess when did you feel that you were ready to take what you've done in California and start to take it elsewhere? And how did you kind of go about that journey and, what states you went to first? And just kind of curious, because was it Arizona first or was it
yeah,
Florida
Arizona
first?
was our first state,
Yeah.
and it's really about the team. How the in our case, Ian, he's our VP of cultivation and head of R&D. Um, he comes from Driscoll's Berries, and that's a very SOP driven culture of management and agriculture that is hard to, first of all, just to say it's very hard to replicate what you're doing in other states, no matter how dialed in your program is or not. The people make it good or bad, right? And managing people at that level is kind of how we've been able to scale. Ian's leadership with the cultivation team is incredible. I look at it within my own org and I'm like, damn, like I wish we had that type of tight run ship. And I think that's the only way you can really do it is with a leader that understands scale and understands management of people. You know, I can't even tell you how many horror stories of my friends that have scaled up to different states and been like, but I can't get the grower there to do what I want him to do. It's like, that is everyone. There's not one person that hasn't happened to, you know, and we have the ability to get the grower to do what we want, when we want them to, in a different way. And all of our growers at every facility have been there since day one. You know, we moved one of our most infamous facilities in Oakland. We moved the head grower there to Arizona to run that. We hired out a guy, Bruno, who's, you know, an incredible cultivator. They work together, and they're great growers. So it really, for me, it's the people. You know, you have to be able to build the team, and you have to be able to give that team trust to do what they need to do to get the quality that you're demanding of them, for lack of a better word, and allowing them to thrive and have a lot of flexibility within their own management skills, but still follow that SOP is really what it all comes down to.
Yeah, I think every multi-state company I've visited, you know, every head grower in every state thinks they're the best, and everyone else is, you know, shit compared to that.
Yeah,
So,
you know, I'm in a cool
yeah.
position where I tell my growers, you know, who's killing it is Arizona, man. They fucking grow some super fire weed, but it's different, right? In California, we have, you know, 4 facilities. They're all spread out, managed by different people. You know, it has to go to the distribution hub to be packaged. It's trimmed on site. In Arizona, we have, you know, 700 and something lights, all contained in one building. It's trimmed there. It's distributed from there. It's just different. And in California, you know, it's not California's fault. We were just kind of fractured in the way that it became legal. We already had facilities that were built out that were able to be legal, so we just switched those. If we were to change now, one thing that we definitely would change is like have enough production in one place to really nail in and drive home the quality. Because all cannabis is batch to batch, right? So our job is to reduce the variability as much as we can, and that can be a big challenge with multiple different facilities. So, you know, some things are good at growing at one place, and some things are going to get good at growing at another. And just having everything under one roof is really the play, in my opinion. But of course, you know, the cannabis tax, the profitability, all those things come into play when looking at building another facility. So right now we're working our best with how we can.
In Arizona, it sounds like it's owned and operated, right? This wasn't a deal like you did in Florida. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And you know, Arizona, we've seen a lot of pricing compression.
The most.
Um,
That's the
yeah,
worst pricing compression market that there's ever been.
and yeah, and without commensurate unit growth, right? I mean, it's really
Yeah.
been pretty tough. How's that been? How have you guys navigated through that?
It's tough. You know, we're the number one. I think our market share is like 11%. We're the number one premium cannabis company in Arizona. And it's tough. It is the price compression. It's a promotion heavy culture there. You almost don't get to do anything without doing BOGOs or 40% off or whatever it is. So luckily, you know, we started with a good price point that's allowed us to whittle it down and add promo and still be pretty profitable out there. You know, if not for the other states, we'd be in a tough position. So yeah, that it's funny. I see other companies go there and I just want to grab them by the shoulders and shake them and be like, why are you going there? Like, because we're there. Like, I really think a lot of people see that and they go, oh, well, they're doing good out there. Like, we should go do it too. And I just wish they'd just pick up the phone so I could say, dude, no, spend your money elsewhere, man. It's not what it once was. You know, we started in the medical market, so the switch to recreational too was just huge. It was insane. And we have that, you know, legacy now in Arizona of quality. So we're not treated as a new entrant, you know, like we once were. So we've been able to stave off the price compression a little bit, but we still have to do super heavy promos out there.
Yeah. When you went to Arizona, did it feel like you were trying to position it as a California brand coming to Arizona, or this was Arizona, we're Alien Labs, this is us, we're here? And because you guys have done really well there with winning awards, and you know, I was just kind of curious, like, you know, for especially years ago, everyone was talking about, oh, bringing California weed to the rest of the country, and we're the best. Was it, you know,
Yeah.
how did you go about positioning the?
You know, it was a brand forward. That's what we always do. We don't really rely on being a California brand, but people know that we are. So it's just like we don't have to market that way because it kind of is just built in, right? So for us, it was just about putting out quality and winning the market and winning the consumers, and that's what we've done out there. With every product we release, we try to do the focus on the same points, which is just high quality. And I'll be honest, it was much easier in Arizona than it has been, or than I think it could be in new states that we go into, because the quality was just not good out there at the time. So that's kind of the great thing about being first to market as a quality focused cannabis company, is that you can show people like, hey, this is actually what you're missing. And with that erodes with time, because other operators are kind of forced to step their quality up if they want to survive. And that's what's happened out there. We say all the time, the rising tide raises all the boats. And that's what happens with quality wherever we go. People start seeing, hey, there is quality here. This is super high quality, and everyone else has to follow suit. So that's been cool to see pretty much everywhere we've gone. Just the raising of the quality in the state that we participate in.
And if you
That's
took a
super
California jar of a strain, Ted, if you took a California jar and then you took an Arizona jar of the same strain, are you getting similar quality? Because there always has been kind of a legacy of Arizona weed sucking, right? Because it's so dry, it's difficult to grow there. Do you feel like you've overcome that and that quality is actually similar between the two states?
I'd say all the time that Arizona has certain strains. It's very strain dependent, but Arizona, there's a few strains off the top of my head that I know that are better in Arizona than they are in California. And it defies logic. They're the exact same. Everything's the same, but yeah, I mean, it's just different. It's growers. It's your grower ability. Their ability to see things and react to them fast, and managing the plants. They manage the plants there really well in Arizona. So it's just different. But Arizona has some killers that we don't even grow in California anymore, because it just wasn't the same as it is out there.
That's really, yeah. It's interesting too, because of all the pricing pressure that is going on in a lot of states, that you're seeing actual companies are elevating their quality instead of actually losing, because they're trying to just cut costs and like cutting muscle to try to keep things going. Are you seeing that more from like the small to mid operator size, or are you even seeing that from like the largest?
I think the best example out there is Growth Sciences in Arizona. They've always been a company that prided themselves on the quality, but it just wasn't competitive with us, for the time. And I think they've really done the work to get their flower to be competitive with ours, and they're seeing it pay off. And I think that's the larger theme in my view, is that quality at the end. Those are the operators that are going to be here. There's always going to be the cheap, low price guys, but if you want to be a brand in a company that stands for quality, you have a chance to succeed. I mean, nothing is more true. Nothing, paints that picture as well as there not being any MSOs in California, right? They left because they just could not compete. They found that they're better at competing in markets where limited licenses, they can be first to market, kind of get a stranglehold on the stores, and then, play chess that way. But quality wins in every state, and quality is going to win in every single state. And I don't think that the ones, the vertical, hey, we're going to grow, we're going to have stores, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. I don't think that's going to work. And I would challenge many people to say, where has that worked in CPG? Because you really got to focus on what you're good at as the market matures. And that's what we've just always done, is just focus on what we're good at, which is flower. And hopefully we can make some other cool products without too many slips, because, we've released 5-10 carts and disposables, or all-in-ones as they're called now. And, we haven't had as much success with those as we have the flower. And that's because what we're good at is flower and scaling that. So we've gotten better at those other things, of course, but still at the end of the day, quality reigns. And most states you go to, in our circles, it used to be, oh, there's, this cannabis company out there and this cannabis company out there, but now it's more brand focused and quality focused. I don't hear much about, those big giants, putting out, LARF at scale, unless it's through the PR circuit, right? So I'm really enjoying how this is all playing out, and the evolution of quality in cannabis industry is, the hands are being held. And I think at the end of the day, you're gonna have those big guys that are, down on the shelf and low quality, low cost, and then you're gonna have some big dogs that are putting out quality at scale and still getting a decent price for it.
Right. Yeah, and a key piece of that quality is the consistency, right? To your point of like what you were saying earlier about people being like, "What the hell?" You don't like that's probably what keeps you up at night, right? Is making
Oh,
sure you're not getting those in your DMs.
yeah, yeah. It sucks to be the face of the brand when you're not doing well. That's for sure.
Right.
Yeah, consistency is everything. I see it time and time again in Arizona. Hey, a new brand just dropped, and their first drop's really good, and their second drop's really good, and then 4 and 5, which is only a year away, people are just running right back to Connected and Alien Lab. So I call it the shiny object. It's probably the same
Mhm.
everywhere. It's just the shiny object. Oh, it's new. This is really good. This is good. But can those producers keep up that quality? And 9 times out of 10, the answer has been no.
Was this when you decided to go to Florida? And I know this was with Trulieve in a partnership, but was it a similar idea of like recognizing that the quality was just really not there, and being a strong medical market, trying to deliver a quality product in that market? Was that one of the criteria, or how did the Florida
Oh, it was definitely the
situation go
criteria.
there?
We're not gonna. We don't. Anywhere we go, we have to be able to put up the same standard of quality that we do in California. As a brand, if someone goes to McDonald's and gets a Big Mac, they want it the exact same everywhere, and that is no different for cannabis. People say, "Oh, Alien Labs is a California weed brand; they're known for their quality," and then they go to Florida and buy some that's less than. That hurts you. Because those are the loudest voices on the internet and in general. If they get something they don't like, it's like, oh, they're going to go talk about it for the next month of their life. So it was simple, is to bring the California quality to Florida. And I know this has kind of become like a interesting dynamic with California weed, where people say, oh, it's not going to matter. Oklahoma grown is going to fetch the same, and the quality is going to be able to be the same. And that is true. But at the end of the day, no matter where you are, you bring an eighth of some California weed and an eighth of some Oklahoma weed, everybody's picking the California weed. It's a simple fact. Even if it's not as good, they're
Mhm.
still picking it. So I think California was lucky, and we are lucky in that regard, because it's become the place that's known for not only quality but innovation. And I think as people come to understand what quality is, the next thing they're going to reach for is innovation. And we're kind of Alien Labs and Connected to hit on both of those things.
Yeah. How has it been working with Trulieve, to your point about being able to drive the quality and demanding of the grower to produce at to your standards?
Yeah, it's been great. We have a cool relationship with them, and we send our growers to become Trulieve employees. So it's a little bit different, I think,
Huh?
than most partnerships out there. So it's been great. I mean, it hasn't been easy. Florida is a very heavily regulated market, and Trulieve has like negative risk tolerance. But it's been good for us to participate in an environment like that, so we can get better. I mean, it's not every, Arizona is like maybe a little bit more strict than California, but not every market is like California, where it's just, hey man, it's hard regulatory wise, more in a business sense than in a flower sense, but it's loose, and Florida is anything but loose. You got a lot of restrictions, a lot of regulations, a lot of asking for permission for things. And, that wasn't something that we did ever. So it was great to be able to like lean on them and have them help us out and get better at what we're doing, because it's only going to get harder and more regulated from here.
And Morgan, you're an
Right.
investor in Sunburn, and I remember do you know Sunburn at all, Ted?
Oh yeah, shout out to Brady. That's my guy. I love that guy.
Okay, cool. So we've had Brady. I think Brady's been on here, but I think it was on a Spaces I did with Brady a couple years ago. Challenges of bringing a California playbook to Florida, and he mentioned, Ted, a lot of California growers coming there thinking they've got it all figured out, and 2 years later they actually have it figured out. Did you guys experience any of those challenges,
Oh,
humidity
definitely.
and stuff?
For sure. Our quality at first was not where we wanted it to be, and it took a lot of hard conversations to get it to where it is today. And um, thankfully, it was a little bit easier, because our branding. This is like an interesting thing. It's like it's easier to get away with low quality when your shit isn't branded the way it is in California. Everyone can just say, "Oh, it's for whatever, licensing deal, blah blah." And it sucks. At the end of the day, that's all we want is quality, but it does take time to get there in any new facility. The days of
Mhm.
popping off of 6 lights in your garage and having it be the best run you ever did is fucking over. So, I think Florida, as far as environment is concerned and the distance away from us and everything like it, because it's hard. I can go to Arizona any day I want. I could go once a week if I really needed to. Florida's tough. It's a 6-hour flight. There's no directs from Sacramento. It's basically a minimum requirement of 3 days. You fly there, you do your thing there, and then you fly back. And that's tough to uphold the QC standards. And it takes a lot of faith and trust in the team that we built for me to be able to call and be like, hey, what's that new? I just got a text from my grower 2 weeks ago in Arizona that was like, hey, this brainwash is the best weed I've ever smoked. And, now we build up the trust. And I know that when he's saying that, it means something. And in Florida, it's different. You get a call like that when you first start. It's like, well, do you really know what you're talking about? Or is this like, what is quality? It's like, it comes with its own set of questions. Like, hey, the grower calls and says, this is really good. I'm like, well, hey, do you know what good weed is? Because, man, I don't know if you really do. So, we built that trust now in Florida, and the Florida weed, I just did a market survey. I do this often, and went and bought everyone's stuff. And, Flowery's close. They're right there. They produce some super high quality Sunburn too, but anyone else, man, it's just not, it's not there. And, it's just not there.
Yeah.
Jungle Boys too. They got good stuff. I don't want to leave those guys out. They definitely produce some fire over in Florida. But at the same time, it's just, it's not Alien Labs. It's not connected. And that's what we're here for.
Yeah. I think what's really, I learned something today. So I really like how you go about the approach of actually your team becomes employees, right? And I think that's a very different approach that I've heard from a lot of these other brands trying to license their in partnership in other states. Would you do that as a way to continue to grow? Like, would you do that with Trulieve in other states, or would you prefer more the Arizona approach of like,
well, we prefer the Arizona approach. We've been pretty avoidant of licensing deals. We've seen what other brands have done with their name and quality through licensing deals, and that just doesn't work for us. The value of what we're doing is in the brand, and the main thing that we're good at is scaling cultivation. We're great at branding and all this, selecting phenos and putting strains out, all of these things. But the thing we're the best at is scaling cultivation. So that's how we want to continue to kind of move forward. But if the right opportunity comes up, we're going to take it. We're going to look at it. This method is a lot slower. It's a lot more methodical. You really have to take a look at the states that you want to go in and say, hey, what's the return on investment going to be? Because, we're making significant investments. We're not a company that has tons of money. We're not, we don't have a private investor that just says, go ahead and do whatever you want to do. So everything that we do needs to really be thought out and strategic. And so, there's a couple states that we're looking at that's like, hey, maybe we'll team up with these people because they actually do grow good weed. But those are going to be just different conversations, right? Like, it's going to be QC heavy. Like, there's going to be a lot of, hey, if we don't like it, you're going to have to throw it away, not just sell it in another bag, So we prefer the Arizona approach, but I think we've also figured out the other approach, and both are working out for us. But I prefer Arizona for sure.
Cool. Jesse, I have more questions, but just doing a time check. Should I keep going, or should we transition?
Ted, if we go past the hour, you're cool, or do you have a hard out?
No,
here
I'm
too?
good. I'm good.
All right, I'm good too, Morgan. Go on. I like it.
Okay. Cool. So obviously we all know all too well that Florida did not go adult use. Was that a factor when you guys were looking at going in? Was like that was an important input, or, and is that a factor when you're looking at other states, or how do you think about it from medical and adult use?
Yeah, not in Florida. It wasn't for us because Trulieve had the infrastructure that allowed us to kind of be in all the stores that we'd want to be in. Of course, it would have been great for Trulieve. It would have been great for us, but it just didn't happen that way. And we hope. It's so funny how, the powers that be up there, they just did not want that for one way or another, down to lying to their voter base about, what was actually happening. I remember, it's going to create a monopoly. And it's like, wait, it literally doesn't do this. Like, it's not a monopoly right now. From DeSantis pulling money from the old opiate fund to battle the weed people, the evil weed people, but they have this, hemp in every store. And, I don't care. I think THCA loophole is great. Keep it up, long live the trap. But for me, I think that pitting the two things against each other that way, like was done with that, was not the right move for any of us. You know, the hemp lobby and all those people that, you know, rallied to not get recreational cannabis legal. It's the same thing the opposite way. I don't like when the, you know, recreational market rallies to have hemp banned. Like it's just not something that I think we need to do. So yeah, like I said, I mean, it would be great if it was legal. We'd be, you know, super pumped, and we, you know, we had the ability to fire up, you know, double the capacity, but it just didn't happen. And I think, you know, in the next 4 years, I think they have to wait 4 years to try it again. But I think that they will. You know, it'll get done there. I can't see Florida not letting that happen for very much longer. Although I did just read that they're going to up the amount. It was, you know, in Florida, it's interesting. I don't know if your viewers know, but you have to have 60% of the vote. Was that right? To get it to pass. And now I think it's going to be 65. So they'll probably just keep trying to do that and do that. But if, you know, if it was just a standard vote like they have in California, it would have passed. It was 55%. So it was right there, but just not enough to, so, you know, the will of the people was not taken out, was not, you know, carried forth in Florida, because it did actually win, but not by the margins that they set for this particular thing, which is just another, you know, another goalpost, another gatekeep that the cannabis culture and the community will tear down. I mean, they have in so many ways. When I was, you know, 13, stealing High Times from Barnes and Noble, you never thought that there was going to be legal cannabis at all. And now here it is, legal in Germany and Thailand and you know, 50, or half the states. So pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then, you know, the other thing that you have to manage in every market is a lot of things I know, but packaging is something that comes to mind. And when you are very much of a brand like you are, you know, how do you navigate that? How do you like break through that this is alien, like we are here, regardless if they make you put it in a lousy bag, so it's whatever, you know, limitations that states might have. Like how do you go? Is that through
It's tough.
social media or
Not. I mean, dude, you can't even really exist on social media anymore. You know, so it's email list. It's the bud tenders. It's every state. It's about winning the bud tenders, right? Like, and that was very easy for us with in Florida because there's nothing like us, and people naturally want to support, you know, legacy market. They naturally want to support the players that started, you know, all this. And you know, we're the cool brand. We're the cool brand wherever you go. It doesn't matter what state you're in. So we definitely have the bud tenders, and you know, we do cool things for them. We started a sampling program with Trulieve. They get you know, either a joint or an eighth of each strain that we ever release, so they all get to try it. They submit feedback and they tell us about how much they liked it, and we use those tools to steer what, you know, to grow more of. So we've created a really cool dynamic with the bud tenders out there, and you know, it is a lot easier in one house. You know, in California we're in 500-600 stores, so we can't get the messaging out there like we would want. But in Florida, you know, we're in just Trulieve stores, and they can get the messaging out like that. So that's something that, you know, the partnership has been really good for us. You know, it's a give and take, of course, but they help us get out to their bud tenders, and their bud tenders help us get out to their customers. So the packaging guidelines and restrictions there are tough. I mean, we can't even use our strain names. We have to take all the vowels out of them, so we don't even have really that strain, you know, branding that we do in other states. But people still find us. We sell a ton of flower out there. So
nice. Just sidebar question, and then I'll pass it to Jesse. Since you mentioned the, you know, the unfortunate like situation we're in with hemp, have you thought about doing anything with, since, you know, like I think there's probably a lot of opportunity for quality and consistency with like THCA. Have you thought about that too? Or
it's just always been one of those things. It's like, hey, like, you know, we don't have a lot of employees. We don't have a lot of time. Like, do we want to put our focus on something that can be taken away, like literally at any moment? That's really kind of what it comes down to for us. You know, do we want to sink a bunch of money and time into something that next week, you know, a bill could be introduced that closes the loophole and changes the whole game? Like, so that's really where we're at with it. We're talking about it. We're thinking about it. You know, jumping in is different, but I hope that everyone has access to high quality weed in the future. And I hope that is through regulation, because as you know, there's not not everyone is a stand-up operator. You know, we would never use pesticides or any of these things, but there's plenty of THCA out there and cannabis in the recreational market that is sprayed with pesticides, and that is, you know, mold and mildews and all these things. Even us, we've had, you know, recalls from aspergillus that, you know, that shit sucks, but there's nothing like that in THCA or hemp. So it's like, if something's out there with aspergillus, like, they're never going to find out. So it sucks. And I think especially for medical cannabis, where most of the people that are using it for medical reasons are, you know, the type of people that could have issues with mold, you know, pneumonia, asthma, all these things. So I think just the regulation is the steps that it needs to go in. But I hope one day it's legal everywhere and you can buy it at the gas station just like you can today.
Are you looking anywhere else in the U.S., Ted? You know, I think you know our business a little bit with Leaf, and we're the largest concentrate producers in California. And our next move is to go to New York, which is, you know, looks like one of the healthier markets in the near term. You know, $1 billion market last year, hopefully 1.5 billion this year. Healthy margins. Obviously, have to model those to decline, but that seems like with your strong brand, you know, maybe an obvious place to be looking.
Yeah, New York for us for sure is high on the list. You know, that'll probably be the next state that we invest heavily into, I would assume. You know, we talk about it all the time, but it's definitely one that fits us. And if we have California, Florida, and New York, like, you could pretty much, you know, hang your hat on that in the States and then go forward into other countries. So
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that. You've seen more people going to Germany, or do you know Hirsch at all? Okay. Hirsch does a bunch of consulting things in the industry, and he's been over in Germany for the last two events. I saw a lot of the hash community on Instagram heading over there as well. Was it last week you're out there, Ted?
Yeah, last week.
Yeah. So tell me what's going on over there and just kind of how you're looking at the rest of the world.
Yeah, I mean, the world is opening up, you know, and it's interesting there. The light in the people's eyes over there is just so much brighter than it is here. You know, in America, we've just been kicked in the teeth and kicked in the teeth and kicked in the teeth. And it seems like, you know, you're out in Germany and even Thailand and Australia, you know, they're welcoming it. They're not looking at it the same way that the California and the United States legislature is. It's not, you know, I think that has a lot to do with the lobbyists, you know, the big people that really don't want cannabis to succeed. And it's different out there. They're seeing it more as an opportunity. So it's great to be out there. The energy is just, you know, it pushes me to want to grind harder and be bigger and, you know, open up these different pathways to be in the other countries, because it's like different. It's like, you know, it's just how we looked at Arizona, you know, as a small state. That's how people should be looking at Germany. It's like, damn, this is untapped. Like, the quality of cannabis out there is like, it's bad, you know? And so if one good operator can go out there and make it happen, and I think there's a lot, EU GMP is tough, you know, it's going to be zero tolerance on microbials. That's going to be very tough to overcome. But even if you grow to your California standard and then have to radiate it, it's still better than what's out there. So, you know, I'm just looking at it as the opportunity that it is, not only as a business opportunity, but to expand the culture and you know, teach more people about what high quality cannabis is. Because at the end of the day, we have our brands, and those are the valuable things. You know, all this stuff is going to be commoditized, but if you have a brand that's about quality, that's going to stand the test of time, and it's proven for us to have already. And so, you know, bringing that to more people in different countries and in different languages and different everything is going to be how, you know, the big boys take their next steps. So we're definitely, you know, positioning ourselves to do that.
So how would Alien participate in Germany, hypothetically speaking?
You just get a grow, EU GMP certified grow in, you know, one of 6, 7 countries that allow import or export, or in Germany itself, you know, and either do it through a licensing deal or through an acquisition. Just like same, it's either Arizona versus Florida. You know, those are the 2 ways that we'll do it, and we're thinking about doing it. You could have a grow in Thailand and, you know, import it through there, but I think the EU GMP standard is a little different. So where you really want to be is like within Europe, Macedonia, Prague, you know, somewhere that is following the rule of the EU GMP and not the just GMP that they have out in Thailand.
And so then when that gets to Germany, would it be able to maintain some sort of Alien Labs branding when it was sold there?
I think there's 2 different methods. I'm not super clued in on this, but there's 2 different ways. There's through a pharmacy,
Yep.
Just like, it is kind of now. And then there's social clubs that you could sell to, like that are similar to a dispensary. So it's kind of like the 215 well, it's kind of like the 215 model in some ways. And then it's like UK Medical and others where they have to actually go to a doctor and get it prescribed to them.
Okay.
But yeah, the branding it can remain out there, and in other European markets, but not in Australia. So that in Australia, it's similar to Florida, where it's like very plain and clandestine. And in some ways, I value that. I see what the vaping thing with the kids is crazy. These geek bars that have a screen on them and they're playing all the things like my kids look at those and they go, damn, I want to play with that.
Yeah.
So like I see both sides of it, and we're not our branding, we're not, I don't even consider our branding to be good, even though I think it is within the context of cannabis. It's not actually good. So if we just become the brand that's known for quality, like we're shooting to be, then people will see that Alien Labs, baklava and a white jar with black font, and they're still going to buy it.
Yeah, you could have the coolest design, but if the product in it sucks, then is that really a good brand? So I think like when you talk about Alien Labs, you guys have cool designs, but it's actually the shit in the jar that makes it all work, I think.
That's right. It's old, I can't remember, old Gary V quote. He said that if your branding's good but your product sucks, that's just speeding up your rate of losing your customer, because they'll buy into it and they'll hate it. And in us, it's like our branding's right here and our quality's up here, so they buy it and then they love it and they never go back.
Yeah. So you've got a whole bunch of opportunities. I know cannabis is hard, Ted, but if I look at it from a positive light, from your perspective, you have the strong roots in California. You've flag in Arizona. You're in Trulieve, which is a good medical market. Hopefully, it gets to be a good adult use market one day. Now you're starting to look outside of the world. When you look forward, like 5 or 10 years, what do you think Alien Labs looks like?
I think it owns California. Connected Alien Labs, we're still heavily focused on owning the #1 spot in premium cannabis. And some months we do combined, but I think both brands separate want to live on their own and own that #1 spot. And doubling down on the markets we're in. Obviously, we want to be in New York. We want to be in the cool kind of tourist areas. It'd be nice to be in Vegas because the quality out there is just very poor. But it's really doubling down on what we're doing well here and expanding to a few select markets and just keeping the train running. I don't think that any Caleb or I really thought that we'd still be doing this 13 years later, but that's how the market's played out. So hopefully something happens with federal legalization and we can expand beyond our wildest dreams. We have a huge vision for what we're doing, and we've been able to execute really well so far, and we just hope to continue to do that. Our aspirations aren't global domination, but if that happens in the as we grow, then that would be incredible. But we're happy just being the biggest in the States. So
well, cool, man. Appreciate everything that you shared with us, and congratulations on the success. I know that you guys work really hard, so appreciate the great flower. I think you're great on Instagram, and it's been fun to catch up with you today.
Thanks, man. Yeah, don't forget to send me the leaf info. We're reaching out. We want to expand our rosin program, and we know that's the way. So
okay, for sure. I think there's an email in your inbox, but I'll send 2 of them.
I'll search. I'm bad at email, man. I'm still a stoner. I'm still a weed guy. I've gotten much better, but still not great. So
well, we've got just one more quick segment you're welcome to hang around for. We like to fuck around with the AI stuff over here, Ted. There's something out there called ChatGPT, I think you've heard of. And we do one called Ask Grok because it's an X. We're on X right now, not literally. So Morgan, you want to take us out with this Ask Grok?
You got it. Well, and first, yeah, Ted, congrats. Very cool to catch up with you today.
Yeah, it's always cool to hang and chat the shit with a different perspective, especially, And I love Grok, man. I think they nailed it with Grok, dude. It's funny because just the branding, right? Like,
yeah.
Nobody ever does the meme where it's like, Grok, is this true? But like they nailed it with that. So they really they killed it with Grok.
Yeah, it's gotten really good. I was just doing some legal work on it this morning. So compared to I used to use ChatGPT and all these others, and I just use Grok for everything now. Yeah. So this question today try to theme it around our guests, and Jesse was a good provoker of this question. And so I asked, what are the top 3 attributes to building a national cannabis flower brand? And the top 3: consistent quality and brand identity, deliver high quality, standardized flower, potency, terpene profiles across markets with distinct brand story. Consistency builds trust despite varying state regulations. Strategic licensing and partnerships, navigate state-by-state regulations by licensing the brand to trusted local cultivators or forming joint ventures with established operators. Scales production without direct ownership, which is restricted federally. And last, effective distribution and marketing. Secure robust distribution channels, e.g. dispensary relationships, and leverage compliant marketing, social media influencer partnerships to drive demand. Focus on education and transparency to stand out in a crowded market.
There it is. I'm glad I have Grok's approval.
I know, right? I mean, it's basically nailed our entire conversation. That's great.
Yeah, for sure. It's real. I mean, that's just really, I joke, but Alien Labs has been the R&D for many brands. We kind of been able to see what we've done and do the same thing and have success. So it's definitely something that's you can replicate. It's not rocket science. It's just doing those actual things as the rocket science, right? And getting them done. So yeah, that's awesome. I love that answer. Great answer.
Yeah, I always think guys back to Gatcher, who was, I think, executive chairman of the parent company. I think Troy passed away a year or two. But he had this quote that I just love, and he says, "Through growing great flower, we get permission to do other things."
That's right. Very
And I
true.
think about, if you're leaf on the extraction side, we're growing a big farm this year. And if you grow shitty stuff and you put in your products, you're going to end up with shit. If you grow shitty
Yep.
stuff and put it in your stores suck. And I feel like that's maybe what's kind of got lost in the industry. So let's start with the foundation of growing great flower, and then we can do a bunch of cool stuff. But if we don't start growing great flower, the other stuff doesn't turn out cool.
I don't know anyone that has started out, recently that didn't have that foundation of great flower that went on to be successful. I think if you're going to be a low price person and you're like low price, like $2 pre-rolls, then yeah, like it maybe doesn't matter. But what you have to do to scale that is different than what you have to do to scale quality and a quality brand. So I agree. It all starts with the flower. And I think if more people really understood that, then the space in general would be in a better place.
Yeah. Well, good chat today, boys. I've been doing some stuff lately for work, and I've been grateful for it. That's my job, and doing things today where we get to sit around and just chat about weed. I'm pretty stoked that
cool.
this is my
I agree.
job. Learned a bunch.
Real
Ted.
quick before we wrap,
Yeah.
Ted, where should I get some Alien Labs in San Diego?
This is a political question.
Which friend do you pick?
Yeah.
Tell them where you are, Morgan.
I'm in Mission Beach. But
Go to
March.
March.
Okay, great.
They're good partners of ours. We got a lot of good partners in San Diego. San Diego loves Alien Labs. That's one of our biggest markets, if not our biggest. And I love it out there too. That's where I plan on retiring. So hopefully soon.
It's lovely down here.
Yeah.
All right, boys. Well, let's close it out here. Ted, really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. Morgan, always great to catch up with you. Thank you guys all for listening. We're going to be off next week for the holiday, but we'll be chatting with you again soon.
Thanks, guys.
The views expressed in this podcast are provided for informational purposes only. Nothing we said should be considered research or a recommendation. All investing involves risk, including the loss of principal.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.